Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to everybody who has dialed in this afternoon for our Oxford MBA virtual information session. We still have a couple of people who are dialing in. So just before we make an official start, I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me okay. So if you could just type yes into the questions box, a couple of people, just so that I know that everyone can hear us loud and clear. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much to everybody for doing that. So let me start by introducing myself. So my name is Hannah Griffiths. I'm one of the recruitment managers here on the Oxford MBA, and I'm joined this afternoon by our marketing manager, Samantha White.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us.
So Sam is going to be looking after the question option for me this afternoon. So you won't hear from her again until the end of the session, but your questions are very much welcome. So do feel free to send those through throughout the presentation, and we will allocate 10 to 15 minutes at the end where we'll hope to answer as many of your questions as we can. Should begin by saying that this is a slightly unusual webinar setup for Sam and I. So normally we do these webinars from the comfort of one of our lovely seminar rooms at the business school. But obviously with everything that's going on in the world at the moment, we are doing the webinar separately, so from our respective houses this afternoon. And just wanted to highlight as well and say a big thank you to everybody for taking the time to dial in this afternoon. We have a very global audience registered for the webinar, and I'm sure that there is not a large majority of people who aren't being affected by everything that's going on in the world at the moment. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us this afternoon, and I hope that you'll find it useful and informative. So the focus of the webinar today is mainly going to be on our one-year MBA programme at the Saïd Business School. I will speak a little bit about our 1+1 programme as well, but I'm mostly only going to touch on that programme, and we will have a dedicated webinar that's focused just on the 1+1 programme in the coming weeks. So do keep an eye on our website if you're somebody who has dialed in, who's very interested in learning more about the 1+1 programme. And so this afternoon, I'm really going to aim to give you an overview of some of the different aspects of the Oxford MBA. So I'll talk a little bit about the experience that you can expect at Saïd Business School, and also the role that we play by being embedded in the wider university and will impact on your experience. We'll talk a little bit about our MBA curriculum and also take a look at the profile of our class. And we'll also talk about the application process, some scholarships and funding, and as I mentioned, a little bit of information about the 1+1 programme as well. So I know that we are all limited at the moment in terms of our ability to travel. So I hope that this image will transport you all, even for a little while, to the beautiful city of Oxford. And I'm sure that this image is one that many of you will be familiar with. So it's the typical image that you might see if you're to Google Oxford. You can see here some of the most famous buildings that the city has to offer, so the Radcliffe Camera and some of the Oxford colleges dotted around it. And for those of you who do end up in the future coming to join us on the Oxford MBA, this is the cityscape that you will be able to enjoy while you are here with us in Oxford. The main thing that I want to focus on here, and that I'll talk about a little bit for the start of the webinar, is to focus on the fact that Saïd Business School is extremely proud to be embedded within Oxford University. Oxford is obviously a global brand. It's a university that's world famous for research excellence, home to some of the most talented people from across the globe. And the positioning of the business school within the wider university and the opportunities that come with that is something that we're going to speak about throughout today's session. Some of the benefits that come with that will be things that are very obvious. So obviously, you know, in terms of the faculty that we attract at the business school and the opportunity that they have to engage with and draw on research across the wider university is something that our cohort really benefit from. But there are lots of other benefits that come with the placing of the business school within the wider university that we'll speak about as we move through the session this afternoon. And this is an image that you will be less likely to be familiar with unless you are somebody who has dialed in, who has had the opportunity to visit us on campus up to now. So this is the Saïd Business School. For those of you who haven't visited Oxford previously or haven't visited us at the business school, I'll talk a little bit first about where we are located. So the image that you saw previously was very much the heart of Oxford city centre, and the business school is located about 5 minutes from that. So we are very conveniently located, definitely within walking distance or biking distance of all of the Oxford College's accommodation options. So once you are in Oxford, getting to and from the business school every day is very easy. We also have a very convenient location in terms of being right next to the train station. So we have really good transport links to London and to other parts of the UK. But again, obviously for people coming on an MBA, career options, networking options are really important. So good to know that we have extremely good transport links with London, and once you step outside of the business school, the train school is directly next to it, and that journey is extremely easy to make. You'll probably notice here that there's an obvious difference in the architecture of the business school in comparison to the buildings that you saw in the previous image. And this really reflects the fact that we are obviously one of the newer departments of Oxford University and very much see ourselves as a modern facing and forward thinking department of the university. This building is where you will spend the majority of your academic life while you are on programme on the Oxford MBA. So you'll come to to the business school every day for your lectures. So we have lecture theatres inside. We have a large number of seminar rooms that you'll maybe use when working on some of your group projects or when you're participating in some of your electives. We also have a library on campus, which is just on the first floor at the front of the building there, which is obviously where a lot of our MBAs spend a lot of their time when they are in the building. And we also have coffee shops, canteens, some nice gardens at the back. So it will very much become your home away from home for the year that you would be with us on the Oxford MBA. So I want to focus a little bit now about the Oxford MBA and take a look at the curriculum in a little bit more detail. But an important place to start, and something that I'm sure a lot of you have already given some thought to, is the duration of the Oxford MBA. So it is a 1-year full-time programme. When we say full-time, we do mean a full 12-month programme. So the programme runs from September to September, and you are expected to be on course for the full year. There are obvious benefits that come with a 1-year MBA, some of which are listed on the slide here. But I think that decision about whether or not a 1-year MBA is it right for you is something that's really important to consider, especially for those of you who are maybe at the start of considering an MBA. If you are somebody who is listening, who is maybe thinking of doing an MBA because you're looking to make a big pivot in your career, or you'd like to make a big sector change and you're not 100% certain maybe exactly of what that change or pivot will be, maybe a 1-year MBA, particularly on the Oxford MBA, which is a very, very intense year and intense programme, perhaps that's not the best option for you. So that is something that as recruitment managers, we are very, very happy to discuss with you and to advise you on. Obviously, for those of you who are listening, who are maybe looking to take 2 years out of your career and to really spend that time, broadening your knowledge and your skill set, we do have the 1+1 option, which is a 2-year programme. And we will speak about that in a little bit more detail. But it's important to be aware of the fact that the 1-year programme is intense. And so there's maybe slightly less space for considering large changes and making big pivots. And we'll take a look now at the nature of the programme and at the curriculum in a little bit more detail. And I think it's really important, before we look at the different elements that are included in the curriculum, just to mention, what the Oxford MBA is all about. So what is it that we are aiming to do when we're putting our curriculum together? What is it that is at the heart of the ideas behind it? And so important to know that really what we're looking to do on the Oxford MBA is to create resilient, collaborative, versatile leaders, people who are ready to tackle challenges, and not just small challenges, but challenges on a global scale. And the curriculum that we've designed and that we're going to talk through in the next couple of slides is really designed with that at its core. We're obviously slightly limited in terms of timescale today, so we'll really only be able to scratch the surface of what's on offer in terms of the curriculum, but I hope that it will give you a little bit more of a picture of the different aspects of the Oxford MBA and what you can expect to experience if you were to come on programme. So the first two elements of the curriculum are the 8 core courses and the elective options. So the core courses are essentially the fundamentals of business. They're covered by everybody on the cohort. And they're essentially the modules that you would anticipate to find on an MBA. And you'll see what those exactly are when we move on to the next slide. The electives are then your opportunity to tailor your learning, so to really personalise your experience on the Oxford MBA, to choose the modules that you would like to study depending on what your career goals are, what outcomes you're looking to achieve once you finish your year on programme. The integrative modules, the co-curricular activities and the applied learning is then where the content that you've covered in your core courses and in your electives is really brought to life, and so gives you the opportunity to maybe apply that knowledge in a more practical way. So this slide will give you hopefully a clearer picture of what a year on the Oxford MBA will look like from an academic perspective. So as I've mentioned already, it's a full 1-year programme, so 12 months, and that 12 months is divided into 4 terms. And you can really see here the influence of Oxford University in how our terms are titled. So Michaelmas, Hilary and Trinity are our first 3 semesters, and those are very traditional Oxford University titles. The final semester is less excitingly named the summer semester. So we'll focus a little bit on each one and what you can anticipate finding as you move across the 12 months. So the Michaelmas term is very much focused on the core courses that I've mentioned. These will be taught in large groups of about 80 students. So we'll look at the cohort and the numbers in a little bit more detail further on, but the cohort is typically between 320, 330 students, and so for these core courses you'll be in groups of approximately 80. And in your first semester you'll also do the first of your integrative modules, and in the Michaelmas term I think it's Global Rules of the Game is the first of our integrative modules. And those modules are really what underpin our aim to create the next generation of responsible business leaders on the Oxford MBA, and are very much the foundation of what our programme is built on. As we move into the Hilary term, you'll see that you'll complete your core courses and you'll also see the introduction of your electives. But mostly what I want to focus on here is the introduction of 2 of the mandatory projects on the Oxford MBA. So I'm sure that some of you who've already done some research into our programme will be familiar with GoTo. For those of you who have not heard of it before, GoTo stands for Global Opportunities and Threats Oxford. It's a team project, so you'll work with 4 or 5 of your fellow MBA colleagues. And essentially the idea behind the project is that you will be thinking about a large scale issue that needs to be considered and tackled on a global scale. You'll focus on one aspect of that problem, and you and your team will work toward creating a business model that tackles it. So the topic for the GoTo project this year is climate change. Previous topics have included things like big data and the future of energy. I can't currently see the questions. I know Sam is looking after them. If people have already started to write in asking what is the subject for GoTo for next year, we don't know yet. So it hasn't been announced to us, and is something that probably won't be published until the summertime. So we're not quite sure what it will be quite yet, but hopefully the previous ones and the fact that this year's one is climate change will give you an idea of the types of large scale issues that you'll be working towards solving in that project. The second project that you'll begin in the Hillary term is the Entrepreneurship Project. And this project essentially challenges you and your team to develop a full business plan that you'll then go on to present to a panel of invited investors. You'll self-select your team for the Entrepreneurship Project. So you may want to team up with somebody in your class who maybe already has an existing idea for a venture, and so they want to use the project as kind of a test bed for that. Or you may work with a team of people where you're starting from scratch and looking to come up with an idea and then scale that all the way through to actually pitching it. For anybody who's listening who's thinking, well, I'm not an entrepreneur and entrepreneurship isn't something that I'm particularly interested in, then please be rest assured you're not the only person to have ever had that thought. It's certainly something that a lot of the cohorts think before starting, but the suite of soft skills that you'll develop by going through that process and working the project through to completion are so beneficial. And so our cohort usually come out the other side really grateful for the experience that they've had as they've worked through the Entrepreneurship Project. The Trinity term, you'll see, really focuses on your electives. There's a huge breadth available in terms of elective choices, and we'll look at that a little bit on the next slide. And essentially you'll have the option to choose as diverse a range of electives as you would like, or you may be somebody who maybe wants to choose electives that are very much focused on your career plan post MBA. And so in that case, you may want to choose a suite of electives that are all focused on a particular sector or a particular area. I would say that the elective choices are very much individual. So you will obviously be given guidance. You will have academic staff and faculty who will be able to guide you and advise you on what elective choices to make. But as I said, they really are your opportunity to tailor the programme, personalise it, and to make sure that you feel confident that the knowledge that you're gaining, the skills that you're developing are going to help you to get to where you want to get to post MBA. The summer semester then has a slightly different look to it. So you have three options once you get to that semester. The first is that you can do some additional electives. That is the most popular option amongst our cohort. So I'm not sure of exact figures, but I would say maybe about 2/3 of the class do opt to continue with electives into the summer term. I guess for lots of people, the MBA is often maybe the last full year in education that they're going to have. And so they really want to invest the time in developing their knowledge and their skill set as much as possible. The other two options that you have in that term is that you can do an internship for credit. And essentially you will be responsible for organising that internship, but obviously there are members of our team at the business school, so our careers team and our programmes team, that will be able to help you with that. And the internship option is a great option and one that is popular maybe with anybody who's looking to make a career pivot coming out the other side of the MBA and is looking to gain a little bit more traction around that. The final option that you have is what's down here as the SCP, and that's the Strategic Consultancy Project. This is probably the least popular option just because it's slightly more niche than the other two, but essentially will provide you and some of your colleagues on the MBA with the opportunity to go to a particular company and do some consultancy work for them. The other things just to mention on this slide that I'll touch on quickly are the two purple lines at the bottom. So they are some of our co-curricular offer and our talent development programme. So the co-curricular offer are essentially complementary to the curriculum that's listed above and include things like the labs that are listed here. So the consulting development programme is available to everybody. The finance lab, impact lab and creative destruction lab do have an additional application element attached to them and are more limited in terms of the number of people who get on, but are obviously hugely beneficial to anybody who is considering or already in that particular sector and just looking to build their network, their skill set, do some workshops in those areas. The Creative Destruction Lab is new this year. It's focused on AI, so for anybody looking for a little bit more information on that, do take a look on our website for a little bit more detail on what that lab involves. And our talent development programme finally is run by our career development team. So I haven't mentioned them yet. They obviously play a really important part in the Oxford MBA, and you'll be very involved with them during the year that you'll be on programme. The talent development programme is essentially something that you can dip in and out of as you work your way through the year. It's a series of kind of soft skill workshops, focusing on things like developing your presentation skills, your negotiation skills, and is something that you can opt to be involved in as you move through the year, depending on what they're offering and if you feel it would be beneficial for you. Here we have just some examples of the elective options that are available. So as you can see here, there is a really wide range available for you to choose from. And as I said, you can be as diverse in your selection as you would like, or as focused in your selection as you would like. But there's a massive range there. They obviously are reviewed annually. And so everything that you see on the list here may not necessarily be available next year. But again, I think that's something that's reflective of the business school being part of the wider university. You know, things are constantly moving, innovating, research is always being done, and so the choice of electives that will be available each year will be very reflective of that. Some elective options that are extremely popular and that aren't listed on the slide that you've just seen are our international electives. So I know I've touched on the fact that it's a one-year MBA, and one of the questions that we frequently get asked is, will that year include everything that I would maybe find on a two-year programme? And when you investigate that a little bit further, often what people are asking is, will there be the opportunity for any international travel or any study abroad during that year? So the answer in terms of the Oxford MBA is yes. So we offer a number of different international electives, two being slightly more international than one of the others. So the most popular international elective that we run is our Growth Prospects and Opportunities for Business in Africa, which takes place in South Africa every year, is hugely popular, and we usually have, I think, about 50 students who go on that elective each year and spend a full week in South Africa. Looking at the different ways that business is done over there and learning more about that market and opportunities that are available there. The second international elective is our Digital Transformation, Marketing, Media and Advertising elective, which currently takes place in New York every year. And then we also have a FinTech elective that will run in London. So slightly less international, considering that you'll already be in the UK. However, given that the majority of our cohort are international, essentially, spending a week in London is still an international experience for the majority. Yeah, and those electives, sorry, I should say, will take place usually in and around the Easter holidays. So I think just in the week before you would return to the business school for the Trinity term is when those international electives take place. And they do usually run in and around the same time. So it's recommended that you would only do one of the international electives as part of the suite of electives that you've chosen. Let's talk a little bit now about our MBA cohort and try to give you an idea here of who you can anticipate finding in our MBA class if you were to come on programme. So it's really important to highlight here the diversity of our cohort, which this year has 329 people. It's obviously really diverse from a nationality perspective. That's something that you'll probably find on any MBA in the UK or Europe. But one of the things I really wanted to flag here, and that maybe isn't clear from the slide, is that in addition to international diversity, we're also really interested in diversity of thought on the Oxford MBA. We're really careful when putting our cohort together to make sure that we have a really wide range of professional experiences in our class. The idea being that you can benefit from, collaborate with, and learn from those around you as much as you can learn from the faculty and the curriculum when you're with us on programme. Another thing just to flag is obviously the percentage of women that we have in our Oxford MBA. So 44% of our cohort this year are female students. This is obviously a ratio that we're focused on. We're very proud that 44% of our cohort are female, but it's obviously something that we feel isn't good enough, and we're definitely working towards increasing that as much as possible in the coming years. And then the final 2 points, the average year's work experience and the median GMAT are just, again, averages, and just to give you a clearer picture of the cohort. In terms of the countries where our students actually come from, this slide will hopefully give you a clearer picture of the parts of the world that are represented. I should say this is a natural fall, so there's no quotas in terms of nationality or background. The only part of the world that we have a commitment to is Africa. I'm sure some of you dialed in will be aware of this. We do have a commitment to have 10% of our cohort coming from the continent every year. That's the only area that we really monitor. We're really proud this year to have 13% of our cohort coming from the continent, and it's an area that we'll look to continue to build and strengthen. Other than that, the offers that we make are made based on the strength of applications. There are obviously definitely some areas here that we would love to see greater representation from. So Middle East and Oceania, we would really love to, Latin America, we would love to grow these percentages a little bit more, and we'll be looking to do so in the coming years. So I mentioned briefly the Career Development Centre when we talked about the Talent Development Programme. They're obviously a really important part of the Oxford MBA and of the experience that you'll have for the year that you're with us. So I want to talk about them just briefly and give you a little bit more detail about that. So the Career Development Centre is a part of the business school that has expanded a lot over the past few years. So we now have over 20 members in our Career Development Centre, and essentially they're divided into 3 teams of sector advisors with a specific focus on finance, consulting, and then global industry, which is essentially a lot of different sectors, but basically anything that isn't finance or consulting. And then at the heart of that is social impact. So within those 3 teams, there will be people who will be kind of the sector advisors for people who are looking to get into impact roles within those 3 different groups. And so obviously during the year that you're on programme, you'll have a lot of interaction with the Career Development Centre. So for this year's cohort, they have classes from Monday to Thursday, and then Friday is essentially the day of the week that is dedicated to careers. And so in addition, obviously, to making sure that we have employers coming to campus and that they're engaging with, you know, the right companies to make sure that they're hiring our MBAs, they'll offer a whole other range of supports to you as well. So things like CV reviews, one-to-one career coaching sessions, running mock interviews in advance of actually having recruitment days on campus. You will have the opportunity to engage with the career team in advance of starting your MBA. So once you have an offer of a place on programme, the careers team will usually reach out to you about 2 to 3 months before you would join us in Oxford, so usually in June or July. And then similarly, once you've finished your MBA, they will continue to support you and offer any advice and guidance that they can for a few months after you complete the MBA. So it really is a more rounded service that they offer than just supporting you for the year that you're on programme with us. And best advice always is to engage with them as early as you can to really reap the benefits of the expertise and guidance that they're able to offer. I know a lot of you will also be interested to know a little bit more about the careers that people end up in once they've completed the Oxford MBA. This is obviously a really, really brief overview, and I would definitely recommend to anybody who hasn't to go onto our website and take a look at the employment report that you'll find there. If you are looking for more detail and more granularity than there is here, that is probably the best place to find some specific information. But the main things I guess to highlight from this slide is just that geographically about 50% of the cohort will stay in Europe post MBA, and that's obviously one of the reasons why a lot of people will opt for a UK MBA, is having the opportunity to stay in the UK or Europe to work for a couple of years post MBA. And obviously the new visa that's now available to graduates to stay in the UK for 2 years once they have completed their programme is something that we hope will really appeal to lots of people who are thinking about doing an MBA. The sector breakdown that you can see on the slide is probably reflective of something I've mentioned earlier, which is the diversity of thought that we pay very careful attention to when we're curating our cohort. So you can see there that there's a really broad range of sectors that our students go on to work in post MBA, and so that really speaks to the variety of professional experiences that we have in our cohort from the beginning. So we've talked a lot about the business school, the curriculum, and what your academic life will look like while you would be in Oxford on the Oxford MBA. So I want to talk a little bit now about the other aspect of the experience that you will have, which will be your membership of Oxford University, and in particular of one of its colleges. So I know that we have quite a global audience who are dialed in this afternoon, and there's probably lots of different levels of understanding about the college system. So I'll try to just give a little bit of detail to hopefully make it more clear. So Oxford University is essentially made up of colleges and academic departments. So Saïd Business School is one of the academic departments where we offer the business programs for the university. But in addition to becoming a member of the business school, when you do the Oxford MBA, you also become a member of one of the 39 Oxford colleges. So what does that mean? So a number of different things really. So the first is that the college can obviously provide you with your accommodation. The image that you see here on the slide, unfortunately, probably isn't actually showing the accommodation that you will be using. So a lot of the college accommodation isn't actually on the college campus, and so will usually be about 5 to 10 minutes away from it. But you will still spend quite a lot of time in your college building itself. That will be through doing things like attending your middle common room, which will be a space to socialise at your college. You'll be able to eat dinner in the dining hall at your college, and all of the colleges will run formal dinners across the academic year. You may also want to engage with your college in terms of maybe playing a sport for them for the year that you're in Oxford, or maybe joining the college choir. All of the colleges will have their own library. So obviously, in addition to the library that we have at the business school, you will have access to all of those libraries across the wider university. And I have to say that's something that the MBA students are really good at. So you do have the opportunity to invite people to have to attend the formal dinner that runs at your college. And MBA students are really good at inviting each other to attend those formal dinners. Lots of people will form a tick list at the beginning of the year and will do their best to make sure that they either visit a library or have a formal dinner at as many of the different colleges as they can for the year that they're on programme. Another thing that you might want to get involved in connection to college life is the Oxford Union, which for most of you, I'm sure you're aware, is the historic debating society. That's something that's really popular with MBA students as well. So you can either go and listen when they invite different speakers, and they invite a really, really broad range from all across the world, from politicians to celebrities to sports stars, as well as getting involved in different debates that they have running as well. Some other aspects, again, linked to the wider university, but the business school as well, are listed here. So we have the Oxford Foundry, which is located about a 5-minute walk from the business school. It's funded and founded by the business school, but important to state that it's open to not just students of the business school, but to all students and alumni of Oxford University. And essentially the Oxford Foundry, well, it does a number of different things really. So it runs boot camps and workshops, looking to develop entrepreneurial leaders and teams. And then they also have an incubator accelerator model, which is on the first floor of the Foundry. So you can see the ground floor here in the slide. And essentially that accelerator looks to accelerate up to 10 different startups every year. So in terms of kind of diversifying your network, which you'll obviously have the opportunity to do in connection with your college, you'll also have the opportunity to do through the Foundry. And again, that's one of the things that's really unique to the experience that you can have on the Oxford MBA. So the opportunity not just to build relationships and form a network through the business school, but also, you know, to be able to sit opposite somebody at dinner who's studying astrophysics and sit beside somebody who studies history, and really embrace the conversations that you can have, the things that you can learn, the relationships that you can build with all of those people from all of those different backgrounds across the year that you're on programme. The Scholl Centre is something that some of you will be familiar with also. It's very heavily involved with the Impact Lab, which is one of the co-curricular offers that we've mentioned in one of the earlier slides, and really has a focus on social entrepreneurship and looks to foster an ecosystem for social entrepreneurial ventures. So for anybody listening who is involved in the impact space, and in particular in social entrepreneurship, being involved with SCOL might appeal to you. And another option for international travel comes through the student treks. So these are arranged by students in collaboration with our Career Development Centre, and essentially the students will decide to lead a trek, usually to the country that they come from, and will essentially organise country visits to different parts of the world for anybody who's maybe interested in learning more about a particular sector or how business is done in a different part of the world to the one they come from. I want to move on now to talk a little bit about the application process and our application requirements. I should start by saying that this is very much going to be an overview. We do run webinars that are specifically focused on application tips. So I definitely recommend keeping an eye on our website and registering the next time that we have one of those running. One of my colleagues will then talk you through in a great level of detail the different requirements, and also give you some really helpful tips for when you do come to hopefully submit your application. So this slide here shows the mandatory requirements. One thing I do want to highlight is that we obviously do review applications holistically. And I do mean that when I say that. So it's definitely not the case that if there's one aspect of your application that you feel maybe isn't as strong as the others, you know, maybe you're worried about your undergraduate degree, or you're not very happy with your GMAT score. I would say don't let, you know, one component being slightly weaker than others stop you from applying. There's definitely still reason to apply, because we will look at all of the aspects of your application. That said, you do want to make sure that you're obviously putting forward the strongest application that you can. So I would definitely recommend kind of waiting until you are ready to apply and you're in a position where you feel happy and confident that all of the aspects of your application are as good as they can be. So the application now is completely online, and the different aspects that are featured here on the slide, as I've said, are all of the mandatory requirements for the application. So you are required to have an undergraduate degree. The subject that your undergraduate degree in doesn't matter, so it doesn't have to be in a particular area. You don't have to have studied business or anything in connection to it in advance of applying. We do look for your undergraduate degree to be an upper second class honours degree, or for your GPA to be the equivalent of 3.5 or above. The minimum number of professional experience that's required is 2 years, and this should be detailed on a one-page CV. We do have a useful CV template available on our website, and I do recommend downloading that and trying to scale your CV back, particularly if you are somebody who maybe currently has a 2 or 3 page CV. We do prefer for people to submit a one-page CV as part of their application. You will need to provide a GMAT or GRE score. There is no waiver for a GMAT or GRE score. It's a question that we quite often get asked, depending on different individual circumstances. Unfortunately, the answer is always no, so you are required to submit a GMAT or GRE score as part of your application. We do not have a preference for which one you submit. That's a question that we quite frequently get asked too. They both hold equal weight for us, and so I would recommend choosing the test that you feel suits you best. So if you're somebody who's looked at both the GMAT and the GRE, and you feel like the GRE might suit you better, but you're worried, you know, that the business school has a preference for the GMAT, that isn't the case. Choose the one that you feel suits you better. A guideline in terms of scores is that we would say 650 is a competitive GMAT score. GRE, you're looking for a combined score of around 321, so that's 160 verbal and 161 quant. In terms of both tests, I would say do not underestimate them. You know, preparation is definitely required. They're an indicator for us of how well you'll be able to cope with the course content. So they are an important aspect of the application, though, as I mentioned earlier, not the be all and end all. We will look at all of the aspects. You will be required to submit 2 referees as part of your application. They can be either academic or professional. Again, it doesn't matter which you opt for there. Best advice I would say in terms of when you're choosing referees is to choose 2 people who will advocate for you. So essentially people who are almost kind of like mentors who can write about you with a level of detail. If you are going to go for an academic referee, do make sure it's somebody who knows you well and who can speak about you with a level of detail. That's really the most important thing when you're choosing who the 2 people are whose names you submit as part of your application. The online assessment is a new feature of the application process this year. So you'll be sent a link to the online assessment once you have uploaded all of the other documents that are required for your application. And you do then have the opportunity to practice the online assessment before you submit for real. I would definitely recommend doing that. Main reason being that the first 4 questions that you'll answer on the online assessment will involve you video recording your answers. And I think that's something that even if you're the most confident person in the world, you have a customer facing role, video recording yourself answering questions can just be very, very awkward. And so having the opportunity to practice with that a little bit before submitting for real is very beneficial. The questions and the time you have to consider and then actually submit your answer are also timed. So it's good to have a little bit of practice of that as well and make sure that you can fit the answers that you want to give into the 90 seconds that you're allocated when you actually come to doing the online assessment for real. The final question that you'll do in the online assessment is a written question, and you have about 5 minutes to produce your answer to that. The online assessment, as I said, is new this year, and it's been hugely valuable for us when we're reviewing people's applications. It's a great opportunity to bring your application to life, to show us your personality a little bit, help us to understand your motivations, the reason why you want to do an MBA a little bit more. So definitely worth taking the time to practice and prepare with it before submitting for real. Final 2 aspects then, so you'll also provide a supporting statement, which is 250 words and a chance for you to tell the committee something else about you that you haven't managed to include in the other parts of the application, but that you feel is really important for us to know about you. And then finally, we have the English language proficiency test. So again, this is a little bit more of a more complicated area, as it's obviously something that some people will have to submit and other people won't. Again, I'd recommend going onto our website and just taking a look at the requirements here to make sure that you know for certain if you are somebody who needs to submit one or not. But essentially, you will be required to do an English language proficiency test unless you have a degree that was fully instructed in English, or that you studied in an English speaking country, or a country where English is the official language, I should say. Again, there's no waiver in terms of that. So unless you fall into one of those 2 categories, you will be required to do a TOEFL or IELTS test and to submit that as part of your application as well. Application stage deadlines. So as you can see, we do have 1 stage deadline remaining this year, which is this coming Friday. If there's anybody listening who plans to submit their application this Friday or who's in the process of completing it, very best of luck to you. We'll look forward to hopefully reviewing your application next week. For anybody listening who has only just started to think about doing an MBA and is suddenly thinking that they might apply on Friday, I really wouldn't recommend that. So the application will take a little bit more time and work than being able to do it in the next couple of days. So I'm sure the majority of you who've dialed in today, if you are early on in your journey thinking of doing an MBA, you'll be considering applying more for 2021 entry. Obviously, the stage deadlines that are listed here are for this year. The dates for next year haven't been published yet. They will probably be published in and around June or July, but the structure will essentially follow what you can see here. So there'll be 4 stage deadlines across the year, and they'll follow this pattern. So will most likely be in the same months of the year that you can see on this slide. Scholarships and funding is something that will obviously be of concern to lots of you who are dialed in today as well. So there's lots of useful information on our website again. Again, all I'm going to do here is just kind of highlight some important aspects in relation to scholarships. So you can see from the slide here that there are lots of different scholarships available. The majority are merit-based and it is competitive. So as I mentioned earlier, it is really important if you are somebody who is considering scholarships and who knows that you will need funding, you really want to make sure that you are going to be submitting as strong an application as possible. Any of the scholarships that are managed by us at the business school will be awarded based on the strength of your application. And so they won't require you to do anything else other than submit the application, have your interview and secure an offer of a place on programme. If you are somebody who applies in stage 1 and gets a place offer at that point, you'll be considered for scholarship awards then. If you don't secure a scholarship at that point, you will be considered again at the end of stage 2, stage 3 and stage 4. So you will be considered for those scholarships that are managed by us at the business school after each stage deadline as we move through the year. Any scholarships linked to the wider university or to any of our external partners, so some of the ones listed here like SCOL, Weidenfeld Hoffmann, you must make sure if you want to apply for any of those that you submit your application by the January deadline, the stage 3 deadline. And those scholarships will most likely have an additional element attached. So you'll most likely have to write an additional essay if you want to be considered for one of those. And for some of those, you will need to possibly go on to have an interview at some point as well. So as I said, there's lots of very useful information on our website. Do take a look at our scholarship and funding page for information about scholarships and also about other funding options that are available as well. So the final thing that I'm going to touch on before we move on to the questions is just to speak a little bit about the 1+1 programme. So as I said, we will have a dedicated webinar on the 1+1 in the coming weeks. So do keep an eye on the events page on our website and register if you are somebody who's listening, who's considering the 1+1 as a possible option for you. Essentially, the 1+1 programme is for anybody who is keen on maybe spending 2 years in Oxford. It provides you with the opportunity to combine a master's degree from selected Oxford University departments and the 1-year Oxford MBA. So there are over 30 partner programs that you can choose from. And the first year really on the MSc that you'll do will provide you with the opportunity to do a deep dive into your chosen field. And then in your second year, you'll join the business school and you'll really develop an understanding of how you can apply the knowledge that you've gained in the first year on your MSc in a broader business setting. So looking at maybe more practical application of the knowledge that you've gained in the first year. There's an excellent scholarship opportunity attached to the 1+1, which is our Pershing Square scholarship. If you are a recipient of Pershing Square, it means having both years in Oxford, so on your MSc and your MBA fully funded, and you'll also be given a living allowance for both years. Again, for Pershing Square, really, really important to make sure that you apply by the January deadline if that is a scholarship that you want to be considered for. And another thing just to highlight in relation to the 1+1, it does involve you doing 2 separate applications. So the MSc that you choose to apply for will have its own application process and timeline. So you'll need to have a look online, make sure you're familiar with their timeline, what are the requirements that they're looking for, and make sure that you have everything submitted to them in time for that. You'll then also do a separate MBA application, and there is just one additional essay component on the MBA application if you are applying to do the 1+1. The decisions are taken separately, so whichever department you've applied to do your MSc at, they will make a decision about whether or not they want to offer you a place on the MSc. We will make a decision about whether or not we want to offer you a place on the MBA. So essentially they are 2 separate processes, and it's important just to keep that in mind in terms of timelines. Obviously be aware that it means doing 2 applications. Sometimes people will opt to apply for more than one of the partner programs as well. So you want to just make sure that you've given yourself ample time and opportunity to get all of your applications done and submitted in time for the different stage deadlines. So next steps. So if you are somebody who's interested in the Oxford MBA, then dialing in today was a great start. I hope that it's given you an overview of the Oxford experience, the business school, our curriculum, our cohort. Next steps for anybody who wants to learn a little bit more. I've mentioned it throughout the webinar. Do please take a look on our website. There's loads of useful information there, and there's the opportunity to download our brochure if you haven't already. There's also lots of useful FAQs and links to some of the different aspects that we've covered today, where you'll be able to get more detail and some more information. We have an amazing team on the Oxford MBA, so our recruitment and admissions team is very, very happy to connect with you. So do please contact members of our team. There is a form on our website now where you can register essentially to arrange a call with one of the recruitment managers or one of our admissions advisors. So do that if you have kind of any specific questions, or you'd like to speak to somebody and maybe have your CV reviewed in advance of considering submitting an application to us. Connect with our current MBA students and some of our alumni through LinkedIn. And then obviously something that we've had to change slightly based on everything that's going on in the world is we've had to move a lot of our upcoming events online. So we do have a huge number of webinars that are coming up in the coming weeks and months. So do please, again, go to the events page on our website. Some really exciting ones that we have coming in the next couple of months are some taster lectures. So for anybody who's maybe interested in having an experience of what some of the faculty do once you're in the classroom here on the Oxford MBA, that will be a great opportunity to have. There's a really wide range on there, so do please have a look and register for some more of those events coming up. And for any of you who are maybe considering submitting an application for stage 1 of next year, then now is probably a good time to begin that work on your GMAT or GRE preparation as well. So we have just about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to aim to answer as many of your questions as I can during that time. Sam has very helpfully been looking after the questions for me as I've been talking through the presentation. Important to say, I think I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the beginning, if you have sent through a question today and we don't get the opportunity to answer it, we do have a webinar running this week, I think tomorrow actually, so tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. And it's essentially kind of like a virtual drop-in clinic really, where you'll be able to submit your question, and then one of my colleagues will be running the webinar, and she'll basically just be answering different questions that people send through. So if we don't manage to get to your question this afternoon, please don't worry, you will have the opportunity if you can dial into the webinar tomorrow. And hopefully my colleague Charlotte will be able to answer some questions for you then.
So thank you everyone for sending in your questions. I hope I've been able to answer some of the ones that have been coming through, and there were quite a few themes of recurring questions. So I've shared a few things with everyone. Hopefully everyone has received a link to the latest employment report, which was for our 2017 and 2018 cohort, and also a link to the scholarships and funding section on our website. There's also been quite a few questions about what's happening in terms of GMAT and GRE test score results for our deadline this week with everything in the world going on. Hannah, if you maybe wouldn't mind just chatting through the process for uploading a placeholder if people haven't been able to sit their test and what the next steps are for that, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. So for anybody listening who does intend to submit your application this coming Friday by the stage 4 deadline, first thing most importantly to state is you do still need to submit by that deadline. So the deadline won't be extended as a result of everything that's going on on being unable to take tests. However, you will be able to submit your application without submitting your GMAT or GRE or also your English language proficiency test if you're unable to do that. So what what we would ask you to do when you're completing your application, if you populate the area on the application where you would normally put in your test scores, and in there just populate it with something, so the date that your test was supposed to be, that will then allow you to submit your application fully. And then once you have that done, if you could just upload a Word document just saying that you were unable to take your test because the test centre was closed and that you plan to take it at a future date, then that will be absolutely fine. We'll then review everybody's application with what they have submitted, and we'll shortlist for interview based on the strength of the other areas of your application. And any offers that we do then go on to make will be conditional on people taking the GMAT GRE or the English language proficiency tests at a later date set by us. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers questions for anybody who's asked about that. Just taking a quick look. Was there anything else, Sam, that was quite a common question throughout?
There were a few questions about if there's still places in stage 4 and what are the benefits of applying online. Online, early. Everyone's applying online,
yeah.
applying early.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was like, there's no option, online only. Yes, so to answer the question, are there still places available in stage 4? The answer is yes. So we will make place offers to people who apply in stage 4. It is important to be aware of the fact that stage 4 is a more competitive application stage than the other stages. Obviously, we've been through 3-stage deadlines already. We've made a lot of offers of places on programme. So that makes stage 4 more competitive. You do need to feel confident that you're submitting as strong an application as you possibly can if you submit in stage 4, but we do make place offers, so please don't be deterred by that. If you're someone who is very determined to come on programme starting in September 2020, then we very much welcome your application this coming Friday, but it is important just to be aware that it's a slightly more competitive stage. The advantages of submitting early, so I presume that means somebody who's maybe considering or kind of weighing up whether they want to apply in stage 4 or whether they'd rather wait until stage 1 of the next cycle. There are benefits to applying early for sure. So obviously if you apply in stage 1 or 2, you're in kind of the first pool of people who will be considered for a place offer. It also means that you're giving yourself a better opportunity in terms of scholarships. So as I mentioned, you would be considered for scholarship awards at the end of stage 1, and even if you didn't secure one then, which is when they're all essentially available, you'd be considered again at the end of stage 2, stage 3 and stage 4. So you are giving yourself a really good opportunity there in terms of scholarship awards as well. The other benefits, I guess, in terms of applying early are that when it comes further down the line, so you have an offer of a place on programme and you are at the stage where you're maybe choosing the college that you'd like to apply to be part of. If you're somebody who has a place offer from stage 1, then obviously you're in the first pool of people who's submitting your college choice as well. So that maybe gives you a better chance of securing a place in the college of your choice.
Awesome, thank you, Hannah. A lot of people are also asking questions about their specific undergrad degrees. So a lot of people are saying, if I maybe have a degree in drama, or if I maybe have a degree in something else, is that going to affect my application? And similarly, some people are asking if we prioritise a higher GMAT score over something else. So perhaps you could speak to the holistic nature of our applications process again.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the subject of your undergraduate degree, definitely don't be concerned about that. So that is not something that we, pay much attention to. It's not something that holds much weight with us in terms of looking at your application. I would say that we probably look more at your degree award. So as I said, we look for a degree that's the equivalent of a 2-1 here in the UK, or a GPA that's 3.5 or above. I know that there's a really global audience dialed in, and so your degree score won't necessarily compute into the two means that I've described, but please don't worry about that. Our team here who process the applications will be able to do that for you. So you will be able to just upload your degree transcripts, and our team here will be able to work out essentially what that is the equivalent of in the UK system. In terms of the GMAT or GRE, as I said, we look at all aspects of your application. So it really is a holistic process for us. I know that I put a slide up that said our median GMAT was 690. I think that's important to give you a picture of, you know, the cohort and the types of scores that people are submitting with. We recommend that 650 is a competitive GMAT score. That said, it's not the only part of the application that we look at, and it won't make or break your application. Absolutely not. We're obviously aware that there are some regional variances when it comes to GMAT or GRE. So in some parts of the world, we have applicants who are in a scenario where they can't even take the GMAT or GRE in the country that they're from. And so they have to move to a different part of the world essentially to sit the exam. And then we obviously have other people who apply from parts of the world where standardized tests are, you know, part of their education system, and so they're much more familiar with the format. So, you know, those are all things that we take into mind when we're take into account when we're reviewing applications. So yes, it's an important part of the application, but as I said, you know, if there's one aspect of your application that's a little bit weaker than others, don't let that be a barrier to applying. And we really will look at all of the aspects of your application and when we are considering whether or not we would like to shortlist you for interview. So hopefully
Wonderful.
that helps.
Thank you. Sorry everyone if I've missed your question. There's a lot coming through, which is wonderful. It's really lovely to see all your hundreds of very engaged questions, so thank you. I think in the last few minutes we could maybe touch on, someone has asked what the exam situation is like, if it's 1 or 2 large overall exams, or if there's multiple examination points during the course.
Yeah, so it's really a mixture in terms of examinations on the Oxford MBA. One of the quirks, I guess, with the business school being part of the wider university is that there is still a kind of in-person examination element on the Oxford MBA. So some exams will be going to an examination hall and sitting down and writing out an exam, which I know to some of you based in different parts of the world will sound alien in the world that we live in now, but that's very much part of the Oxford University experience, and you'll wear the traditional Oxford University gowns when you go to sit those exams. So that's definitely one of the types of assessments that you can expect to find on the Oxford MBA, but it will be a variety. So for some modules you will be doing maybe individual assignments, for some you'll be doing group projects. For some of our modules, there's also a class participation grade attached. So it really is a mixed bag through the year, and they will be spread across the year. So particularly in Michaelmas, I know, for example, you'll maybe do kind of 4 weeks of your core courses, and then there'll be a week where you'll have assessments, and it will kind of follow that pattern across the academic year. So I hope that's helpful. And also exciting to have the opportunity to wear those very attractive Oxford University gowns that I'm sure any of you who have visited Oxford previously have seen people wandering around wearing them, and you've possibly wondered why. So if you do end up applying and getting a place on programme, that could be you at some point in the future.
All right, we're basically at the end of our time now, so I think we might have to wrap that one up. But thank you everyone for your questions, and I'll just send an email address around to everyone. So if you did have any other questions that either we didn't get to today, or you feel that your personal situation needs a little bit more clarification, please just email our team. But thank you very much for all your questions and comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sam. And just to say again, for anybody who did send through a question, and if you would like it to be answered by a physical voice rather than a written reply by email, do register for our webinar tomorrow. It'll be run by one of our admissions advisors, Charlotte, and she'd be really happy to have you send through your questions, and she'll answer them during the 30-minute webinar that she'll be running tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. So do please go and register for that if you would like to have another member of our team answer your question tomorrow. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us this afternoon. I hope that you all stay safe in the coming weeks and months, and we'll very much look forward to hopefully hearing from some of you by email, and then receiving some applications from you further down the line.